If your main concern is pores, you're doing great. That is like the most smallest, and I'm not trying to take away from people's concerns. I know we all like obsess over different things. Having large pores is the smallest concern that you can have. And it is the easiest to minimize the appearance of.
Welcome back to Unpacking Beauty. This podcast answers questions about the science, marketing, and trends in the beauty space. My name is Kelly Driscoll. I am the creator and host, and I am a skincare enthusiast and content creator on YouTube. Ever since I've been into skincare, well before I was ever a content creator, some of the sexiest ingredients out there have been chemical exfoliation. AHAs, BHAs, these ingredients can absolutely transform your skin and really help you achieve the results that you want to see. But throughout the years, and I am saying this as somebody who has done all of these things before, I have seen chemical exfoliation be used, abused, misunderstood, and overused. You know, I started a lot of my YouTube content talking about my compromised and damaged moisture barrier. And you know what that came from? Using too much chemical exfoliation. They are powerful ingredients, but they are, ingredients that you can't underestimate either. You have to respect them. So today I wanted to talk about how can we use chemical exfoliation like a pro? What are the different options out there? How often should we be using chemical exfoliation in our skincare routines? And really, overall, how can we be a pro at using chemical exfoliation at home? Today, I'm so thrilled to be welcoming Justin Spracklin, Maximum Skin, to the podcast. Justin is a derm laser specialist and currently a nursing student. And I've been following Justin's journey on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram for quite a while now. And I really love the nuggets of wisdom that he shares with his audience. I was really excited to ask him onto the podcast, especially to talk about chemical exfoliation and how we can really understand and use it like an expert. But Justin is also a specialist in lasers, and that is something that I really don't know a lot about. There are sometimes conditions with our skin and things that we want to achieve that topical skincare just can't do, but lasers might be able to do. So I wanted to also ask Justin about, when are lasers the correct choice? What skin conditions can they treat? And how can we find a good provider? So without further ado, I'm so excited to welcome Maximum Skin to the Unpacking Beauty podcast to ask, how can we use chemical exfoliation like a pro? Maximum Skin, welcome to Unpacking Beauty. Justin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Like I said, before we started to hit record, I was like running around. So I'm like a little like, let me catch my breath. But I'm super excited to have you here because I've been following you on Instagram for a few years now. And I have loved seeing your journey as you've progressed through your education and just how your content has grown. And I absolutely love all the little nuggets of wisdom and advice and knowledge that you're sharing, because it is just so important in the skincare space for us to be getting like accurate information and really to be questioning some of the kind of shadier sort of treatments and laser things that are going on right now. It's really great to have a reasonable voice in the community. So for those who are not familiar with you, with your TikTok and with your Instagram, I would love it if you could just give like a short introduction to who you are and what you're up to now.
Sure. So my name's Justin. Ironically, people always think that my name is Max, and because of the Maximum Skin, but my name is actually Justin. So I started in the beauty industry in 2015, and then that was in makeup originally. Then we branched into skin and laser, and now I'm moving into nursing as well. So it's been a while.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I saw that you started your program. Was it just a few months ago, right?
Yeah, so I'm actually on reading week right now. This is my eighth week that we're technically in. And I have 2 years to do in total, so I got a long way to go. But it's like flying by. We're already at midterm for the first semester. So I'm like, wow.
Wow.
Okay.
It's like short but intense.
Yes.
I'm really excited about our conversation today. And I love that you mentioned that you started off in makeup, because I feel like for those who get into the skincare space, for many, not all, but for many of us, our first entryway is like that makeup world. And then we're like, hey, how can I make my makeup look better? And it's like, oh, work on my skin.
That is exactly how it all starts. And for majority of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, definitely. It was a very similar journey for me as well. So I definitely look up to you as like the exfoliation like expert. Like I love all the information that you have about different acids, like how you can combine salicylic acid and benzoyl peroxide to help with acne. You've shared a lot on your acne journey and how you've been able to clear up your skin. And so I would love to just kind of start with exfoliation, because I really, like I said, I look up to you like, how can I exfoliate like a pro? So I want to start with like a kind of like a easy one, a softball, if you will. But let's talk about like the difference between chemical exfoliation and physical exfoliation, because there's a lot of noise and chatter about which one is better. Not only which one is better, but also I think physical exfoliation gets a bad reputation because people are like, it's terrible for your skin. So I would love for you to kind of just break down like the difference between the two, and really which one is, better, or maybe which one is the best for a certain situation.
For sure. So we'll start with physical exfoliation. Physical exfoliation, or also known as like mechanical exfoliation, some people will call it. Basically, that is going to have something in it that's going to more so give you like that scrubby kind of feeling. And like the simplest layman terms that I can use, it's like the scrubs that you'll feel. You have things like apricot scrubs, walnut scrubs, things with fruits and nuts. You have things like that have rice in it that will, the rice enzymes, which technically I kind of consider it more like an enzyme exfoliate, but it is what it is. They'll have the little things in it. There's also like the ones that used to be around with the little plastic microbeads in it, which in Canada at least they're banned. So you don't see much of that. But physical exfoliation is going to basically exfoliate everything. So how I look at it is taking off the live skin, dead skin. It's kind of just removing all the skin on your face. And that's kind of like your way of exfoliation. Whereas chemical exfoliation, there's multiple different ones. You have AHAs, you have BHAs. AHAs are going to be things like glycolic acid, lactic acid, mandelic acid, things like that. BHA is really your salicylic acid. In terms of which one's better, I never really say one is better than the other, because everybody has different needs, and different people can benefit from different things. When it comes to physical exfoliation, though, I will say those crushed up fruit and nut shells are not the best. I wouldn't recommend them, but there are physical exfoliants that are really great that aren't going to do the same thing. It's not as abrasive or harsh as like a walnut scrub or an apricot scrub type of thing. Who can benefit from what? Salicylic acid is your acne person, hands down. You can get it on leave-ons, you can get it in wash-off products. For sensitive skin, a wash-off is going to be always much better than something that's leave-on. For people with like hyperpigmentation, there's like the glycolic acid train, or the mandelic acid that people love. Lactic acid, if you're like more on the drier side, because it's a humectant. There's so much. For me, I prefer chemical exfoliants, but I never tell people that physical exfoliants are bad, because that's a pretty big generalization that, in my opinion, isn't true.
Yeah, it definitely, that's the one thing is like the deeper I go into the skincare world and the more I look at a lot of this, like a this or that kind of thinking, it's just, it's never this or that. There's always a middle ground. Everybody is so different. Everybody's skin needs are so different. So to like completely write off something, I always am like, well, let's dig a little bit deeper here. It can't be as simple as that. I will say,
Never
I am
is.
also like a big fan of chemical exfoliation, but like I love like physical or manual exfoliation for my body. It is like one of the like best things for like glowing like body skin. And chemical exfoliation works great too, but like if you're not super tight on your body sunscreen application, if you're in high UV situations, you could be making your skin a little bit more sensitive to the sun. done. So if that kind of sounds like you, maybe some physical exfoliation, even just on body skin, can be a real game changer. So I love to hear that we shouldn't be afraid of it.
Yes, definitely don't be afraid of it. And I'm the exact same way with when it comes to body, especially like in the shower. I find that a body exfoliant that's like a chemical exfoliant, I go through it way too fast. But with
Yeah.
physical scrubs, I feel like they last forever. So I'm with you on that.
So let's talk a little, like dive a little bit more into chemical exfoliation, because as we kind of already touched on, there's a lot of myths out there. There's some misinformation or misunderstandings about this class of ingredients. So I would love to talk about some of the myths surrounding like how often you should be using it, that you should be working yourself up to the highest percentage available. Can you walk us through some of these myths and really, offering some of your best advice for using chemical exfoliation at home like a pro?
So this could be a whole podcast episode on its own since there's so many, but we'll stick to like a few that are very common, like the amount of times you should do it a week. The main one is always 3 times a week, and that's not necessarily a myth. But I don't necessarily also agree that again everybody needs to do it 3 times a week because again people have sensitive skin. Some people can only do it once or maybe twice a week. But generally speaking, I won't recommend doing it more than 3 times a week. And it can be a little bit confusing because you do see brands that will put on their products like daily exfoliant or daily this and that. When the word
Yeah.
daily is there, people are going to use it daily. And that's where I actually see the most issues and the most irritation that arises from it. So 3 times a week is great. If you can't do it 3 times a week, don't think that you have to. You can do less than that. That's also fine. In terms of working up to a higher concentration, this is, I think it stems from working in the industry, and we gradually will work our way up to higher and higher levels with like the chemicals exfoliants that we use in clinic, like glycolic or TCA or whatever. We don't ever start off with the maximum concentration that we have. We gradually work our way up. So I feel like that might be where it came from. And also the fact that people believe that the higher the concentration, the better the result. But again, relaying it back to like working in clinic, we can use a 30% glycolic the whole time and still get the same results. You don't actually have to increase it. It's just often done. But again, it doesn't have to be done. So I think I answered that. Higher concentration, not actually necessary to do. You could do with whatever your skin will tolerate. That's the best for you. Don't try and work your way up to like 30% and use that 3 times a week. It's going to be a lot.
Definitely. One thing that I have been kind of learning and embracing, as I do have sensitive skin. So like 3 times a week is like, that's a lot, and I have gone through trial and error, and I've built a lot of my, my success, if you will, or a lot of my community around the fact that I broke my skin barrier from using too much. And so really going forward, I've learned to tap into my skin, which I know is really a skill that develops over time as you're in skincare. I know that like that's a frustrating piece of advice for some people because you're like, I don't know how to tap into my skin, but it does come with time and with
It
experience, and
will.
it's
It
okay
will.
if you make mistakes. Yeah. And so I've kind of started to embrace the idea that like consistency is almost better than frequency. And what I mean by consistently is like if I can only do it 2 times a week or even 1 time a week, if I'm doing that consistently week to week, month to month, I'm gonna still see really good results than if I'm trying to push myself to 3 times a week. I break my skin barrier, I stop doing it for 2 weeks, I get back on, it's inconsistent. If it's inconsistent results, right? So it doesn't really matter how much you're doing it, but it's like more about finding that right spot for you and being consistent with it is when you're really going to benefit from it.
For
So
sure.
that's maybe something that's a little easier for people to latch onto if you're feeling like, man, I just cannot use my AHA 3 times a week. Um, I agree with you too about the whole daily. Label. Do you have any like advice about that? Because there are some alternatives like PHA and LHA, kind of newer generation AHAs and BHAs that are gentler. What's your thought process on incorporating those maybe more frequently?
It still comes down, and for me and what I see, I can only base it off of like my own practice and seeing like
Mhm.
people come in with all the irritation and seeing what they use and seeing how frequently they're using it. That's really what I can base it off of the most with. Ultimately, nobody needs to exfoliate daily. It is okay to have dead skin on your skin. It's not the end of the world. It's going to happen. So I usually just tell people that that's like the way that I kind of put it is that having dead skin, because most of the times what people want to do is they say that like, I want to get the dead skin off my face so I can have the glow. But the
Yeah.
dead skin isn't like the minute you exfoliate, the next day it's there again, right? It's not like it's consistently you remove it and it takes the whole 28 days for a whole new layer to come back up. They're always working and working and working. Your skin cells are always making its way up to the surface. I just don't think that it's ever necessary for everyone to do. Even if it's gentle with like the PHAs that a lot of people are using now. I
Mhm.
still don't think it's necessary. But if you do find that it works for you, by all means, you can ultimately do whatever you want to do. It's your skin, but I usually recommend don't.
Okay, great. I love that. And I think the biggest takeaway is just kind of feel free to open up and experiment, figure out what works, but ultimately feeling like you're empowered to pull things back from that recommended 3 times a week or the highest percentage if that's just not fitting, it's not working for you, it's okay. So let's talk about pores because I know if I don't ask you about pores, somebody is going to say, "Why didn't you talk about pores?" Um,
Oh
so
Lord.
I know. So, okay, really what I am noticing, having been in the skincare space for quite a few years now, not only as a content creator, but prior to that as a skincare enthusiast, I have noticed that like over the last, like, I would say probably like 5-ish years, people are so obsessed with their pores, more so than they ever were before. And I definitely think that, like, okay, social media, right? We all have access to these really high tech, hard to detect filters, right? So a lot of the content that we are seeing is people who are using filters that completely smooth out their skin to like a poreless kind of a look. And I think a lot of us are actually starting to take on the idea that we can look like that in real life, not in front of a camera, not on Instagram or TikTok, but that we could actually like strive to achieve a poreless type of look. And I get a lot of questions about how can I get rid of my pores? How can I erase my pores? And you can't. They are a structural, like they are integral to the structure of your skin. You actually need them. They serve a function. You can't get rid of them. They are there for a reason. So I would love to hear your take on this and maybe some of your advice for people who are maybe striving to refine their pores, or just some tips on what we can do to maybe tighten them up and refine them and make them look a little bit better.
So I always start off with saying there's a quote that I always say, and it's if your main concern is pores, you're doing great. Because
Yes.
that is like the most smallest, and I'm not trying to take away from people's concerns. I know we all like obsess over different things, but having large pores is the smallest concern that you can have. And it is the easiest to minimize the appearance of after, again, consistency. And I feel like this is going to be like a word that we use quite a lot during this is consistency, also patience,
Yeah.
because nothing's going to
Mm.
happen overnight. So if you want to minimize the appearance of them or refine them, the main thing for me is always retinoids. Um, Things like retinol or retinaldehyde, tretinoin if you have a prescription, Differin, it's available over the counter in the USA and prescription, I'm pretty sure everywhere else. Um, those types of things are great with refining your pores. It also does pretty much everything. They are like the gold
Yeah.
standard of skincare ingredients, in my opinion, aside from sunscreen. But the other thing would be exfoliation as well. So I find that salicylic acid I personally love when treating pores, for the simple fact that they have always been told that they clean out the pore. So you're getting like all that oil, debris, and everything that might be kind of how I explain this is your pore is kind of like a little hole, let's say. Well, it isn't, it is. But it's kind of like a little divot in the skin. And if there's oil in it, when it hits off the light, it can appear a lot larger than if there's no oil in it. So I find that like people with drier skin, you don't notice them as much. People with oily skin, you usually notice them a lot more. So things like salicylic acid, I find works great. Things like retinoids, I also find really great with minimizing the appearance of them, but ultimately they'll never go away. You can also do things like laser treatments, even that can help with refining them, but that's a really expensive purchase for something that you could do over the counter that wouldn't be as expensive.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up retinol because my understanding too with the if pores look maybe a little stretched out or even a little bit saggy, working on stimulating collagen can actually help to firm that up. And when the pore lining is more firm and stronger, they're gonna look smaller because they're not sagging, right? So if you can firm up your skin in general, you might also see some of that like pore refinement as well. And then of course, yeah, good old BHA, good old salicylic acid
My
dives deep in
favorite.
there. Yeah. And oil control, I think that was an interesting one too that not everybody necessarily thinks about. And there's a lot of different reasons why your skin could be oily too. Like I don't have like classically oily skin. I'm kind of combo and I lean a lot on the dry side, but I'm dehydrated. And so I find that a lot of hydration actually keeps that oily imbalance that I can get in my T zone. It keeps it under control. So
Mhm.
it's not always about stripping the oil off of your skin necessarily, but figuring out why your skin is maybe overproducing oil in the first place might be able to help in combination with those other factors. So it's not just one product, it's not just one ingredient. It's a multi-step. You kind of come at it at all angles
Yeah,
as far
exactly.
as
And it's
pores
really
go.
like balancing everything out. It's not
Mhm.
something, like we said, it's not something that you figure out overnight. It does take a long time. And once you kind of play around, you do your trial and error, or if you seek professional help, whether it be an esthetician or a dermatologist or whatever, eventually you do find that happy balance of your skincare routine. And I always tell people, once you know what works and it is working, don't stop. Just keep using that. You
Yeah.
don't have to switch things up. Keep it going. I've been using the same routine now for like 7 years, I think it is. Um, and that's really just what has kept my acne fully away.
Yeah. This just inspired me too because I'm pretty sure I saw a reel from you like a couple of weeks ago where you were talking about somebody who wanted to stop using their skincare products because they cleared up their skin. I would love for you to just speak on that because we are talking about patience and talking about consistency. And I saw that pop up again recently somewhere else. I'm like, oh, Justin talked about this. Like, so if there's people who are treating maybe their pores or maybe they're treating acne or congestion or fine lines and wrinkles, and they've achieved the benefit that they were looking to get, they've achieved those results, and now they want to pull back on their skincare routine. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the analogy that I always use is if you go to the gym and you're working out and you put on muscle mass and you say, "Great, I got abs, I got big muscles, I'm happy with my body. I'm never going to the gym again." What happens? You lose the muscles. It is all about consistency. So no matter what you're doing in life, whether you're dealing with like hair loss and let's say you're using Rogaine, or if you're doing skincare to help with acne or rosacea or whatever the case may be, um, anything that you're doing in life, you have to consistently keep doing it. Otherwise, you will not get the benefits from what you're doing. So that's kind of like the analogy that I always use. And that really puts it easily into perspective for everybody once you say it like that.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, especially as someone who's fallen off the gym bandwagon.
Same.
I totally get it.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah. Skincare is a lot easier.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I really want to talk to you about the difference between pi, P-I-E, and P, I just call it P, P-I-H.
That's the first time I've actually heard someone call it that, but okay.
Post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation.
Hyperpigmentation.
Puh.
Yes.
Let's talk about that because let's talk about the differences because the treatment for these are very, very different. Pi being usually the red mark that's left behind, and Puh. I'm gonna keep saying it
I
because
love
it's
that.
funny.
I'm gonna start using that now too.
Yeah. Puh is the dark, like the dark brown, or the discoloration on the skin after an inflammatory event. So this is actually something where, yeah, the treatments for these two things are very, very different, but sometimes these conditions are often confused for each other. So I'd love for you to talk about the differences between the two, what causes them, and what can we do about them?
So we'll start with P.I.E or PI, post-inflammatory erythema. It is a vascular related concern. So this is why it's more red. And those types of concerns, typically, you're not going to get a whole lot of benefits out of topically. I know there is a whole lot surrounding azelaic acid with helping with these marks. However, it's not always the best. I find that it never really does a whole lot with the over-the-counter
Mm.
products. With prescriptions, you can get higher concentrations, and I do find that like a 15-20% azelaic acid does help a little bit. But when it comes to over-the-counter, typically I only see at like 10%, and I just don't see that great of a results. So typically what ends up happening is, one, you could leave them alone. They're both transient. Post-inflammatory erythema and hyperpigmentation are both transient, meaning it will go away with time. It can just take a very long time for that to happen, but it will go away. So if you're on a tight budget and you don't want to spend any money, you can just not do anything. The better option would be to focus on what's causing it, which typically is breakouts or acne. So if you had that under control, in the long run, all of this will just go away. Post-inflammatory erythema laser treatments are typically the quickest, easiest thing that you can do, but very expensive.
Mhm.
Post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation is melanin related. So with these two things, vascular and melanin, they don't, it's not the same thing. So treating them that's why it's very different. So things like tyrosinase inhibitors, you have kojic acid or alpha-arbutin, hydroquinone, ascorbic acid, retinoids, all that kind of stuff will all help with lightening these. Again, transient, but you can do something to help with them. And typically, if you are prone to either one of these, it's going to consistently keep happening. Personally, if I was someone who dealt with the hyperpigmentation side, I would always have some type of product in my routine that regulates the melanin production. That way,
Mm.
before it even occurs, you have something combating it, which could result in it lasting not as long or not being as dark. So that's like one way that you can kind of combat it before it even occurs. So always thinking ahead, prevent rather than correct, is always the best.
Mm.
So to figure out which one is which, the easiest thing that you could actually do is just press on it. So if you have post-inflammatory erythema, which I have a little zit here, but I have tinted sunscreen so you won't be able to see it. But if you pressed on this and then let it go, it blanches. So it turns white and then the redness will come back.
Mm.
Vascular related when you see that. If you press on it, you let it go and it stays the same color. Typically it's going to be post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. It's not bulletproof, but it is one of the easiest ways because if it does blanch and goes white, you will know that it's vascular related. It's similar to like when you press on your nail, you let it go, it goes white and fills back up. Um,
Mm.
that's like the easiest way to tell the difference. And then the treatment options are very, very different for the two of them as well.
Thank you for addressing that because, yeah, the confusion there is difficult. And my understanding has always been that with Pi, it's topical is just probably not going to work. And so understanding that it's more of a vascular thing actually really helps us understand why a topical skincare product probably isn't going to help that condition as much. But also knowing that it's just going to go away with time
Yeah,
is very helpful too.
it's
Like it's very positive.
I always tell people, and I'm sure there is somebody who has tried out products and it did help with them. Um, I'm just speaking more generally. That's not really always the case. But again, it will go away if you just do nothing. If you just focus on taking care of your breakouts and you have that more regulated, it will, or balanced, you won't suffer from any of these. That it's related to the acne. If it's hyperpigmentation or trauma from something else, I mean, that's a different story. But in terms of acne, Once you have that under control, both of these issues usually aren't a problem anymore because the breakouts aren't happening.
Yeah, especially I get a lot of hyperpigmentation, and I have found that definitely being consistent with the products that keep your skin clear absolutely helps so much. But also trying to keep that, if it does happen, keeping the inflammation down can lessen the mark that might be left afterwards as well. So that means no touching it, no pushing on it, no more pressure, but also maybe adding in anti-inflammatory ingredients. For me personally, things like centella and mugwort have been amazing for calming the inflammation, and that means that the mark that's going to be there, because that's just my skin, that's how it is going to be a lot less. So I think that's some really great advice to end on there about just kind of getting that consistent routine that can kind of help prevent some of this, can be very, very helpful.
I
And this is
will
actually a really
say,
great.
oh,
Oh,
sorry, one quick
no, go
thing
ahead.
because I
Yeah.
will get in a lot of trouble if I don't say this.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Sunscreen is the best thing that you could do as well. I have to say it,
Yeah.
otherwise I know someone's going
Yeah.
to come for me if I don't say it. Definitely wear sunscreen. It's going to help the most.
We're just assuming you're already wearing your sunscreen.
Right? That's what I do.
Goes
That's why I
without
don't
saying.
mention it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And that definitely can keep things from getting out of hand as well. And yeah, if you're trying to fade stuff, but you're not protecting your skin from the sun, it is just like pushing that rock up the hill and then having the rock come right back down on you.
Perfect. Analogies throughout this whole episode. We love it.
Yeah, we do. So let's talk about skin conditions that can't be treated at home. We've kind of already covered a little bit about topicals that can help, but I think there are some conditions where maybe we've struggled for a really long time, maybe with melasma or maybe with sun damage. Maybe really bad like acne scars, pitting in the skin. When is it time to start considering in-office treatments? When is it maybe time to start considering lasers? I know this is your specialty. I don't know that much about what lasers can do for the skin. So I'd love it if you could just walk us through when it's time to start considering something like that.
So I'll start with, besides the cosmetic aspect of like treating sun damage or acne scars, it can also treat a lot of actual skin conditions. I know that like for me, I've done CO2 on like uh, actinic keratosis or AKs. They're basically like precancerous lesions. The laser resurfacing device can actually help with getting rid of them and controlling them. So
Wow.
like you can do a lot that is medical, but is still considered cosmetic. So there's a lot of things that lasers can do. We primarily always focus on like, again, those sun damage, acne scars, fine lines and wrinkles, stuff like that. But it can do a lot more. So I always like incorporating that just so people know that like we're not just doing this for vanity, we're doing it for a lot of things. And these types of conditions that are tricky to treat can also impact people's mental health as well. I know that like at
Yeah.
school, like a lot of bullying can occur. I've had lots of patients that talk about this kind of stuff. So it's actually really heartbreaking. And it's sad that a lot of insurances don't cover these types of procedures either, even though they can actually help benefit them quite a lot. So into the laser treatments for things like sun damage. Sun damage potentially could be treated at home. It will take a very long time. So laser is generally the quick fix. I tell people, if you're going to do any laser treatment, especially for sun damage, make a commitment with yourself to, of course, always wear the sunscreen and reapply if you aren't already doing it. But you also need to just like kind of avoid the sun as much as possible. You can't be out at the beach tanning for like 6 hours in the day. No tanning beds. Travel, got to keep that in mind as well. Obviously, no one's going to tell you stay at home and live under a rock for the rest of your life, but these procedures are very expensive, very, very expensive. So if you're going to invest this type of money, the best thing that you can do is change your lifestyle so it's not a consistent thing that you have to do yearly, which is kind of like a myth with some of these lasers, is that you have to do them annually. You really don't if you are taking care of your skin the way that the provider should be telling you how to do. So melasma is tricky with lasers because melasma you typically and technically should not be doing laser treatments on because it can trigger it and make it worse. There are
Mhm.
some exceptions. One of the exceptions is pico laser, which is often used for tattoo removal. And because it happens so quickly, the laser's firing at such a rapid rate, it's happening in a picosecond. That's why it's called pico. The melasma is not actually going to be triggered by this at all, versus if you did something like a laser resurfacing treatment like CO2 or erbium, that can actually trigger it and make it worse because of all the heat that those types of lasers produce.
Mm.
So melasma with pico is good. Um, it takes a long time. And again, with melasma, I always make sure everyone's really understanding that it is going to rebound in almost all cases. So if you're investing money, this is one of the ones where you likely will be doing it annually and potentially
Mhm.
even more often than just annually. It could be every 3 months, it could be every 6 months,
Yeah.
it could be once every 3 4 years. It's really hard to say, but it typically comes back. Acne scars. This is honestly my favorite treatment, or my favorite thing to treat. Atrophic acne scars are the indented ones. Those are tricky. There are so many treatments out there that you can do outside of just lasers. Of course, there's like the microneedling, there's subcisions, there's TCA cross, there's filler. There's a lot of things that you can do. You can actually use Botox as well for acne scars too, which a lot of people don't realize. There's a lot of things that you can do with acne scars. In terms of lasers, again, expensive, and just keep in mind, they're never 100% gone. No matter what you see on social media, they are not 100% gone. You can always see them a little bit. I usually tell people post treatment, if I can stand 6 feet away from you and I don't see anything, that's a great result. And that's kind of what you're going to look for or look forward to. Ultimately, if I come close to you or you're looking in the mirror, you're going to see a little bit of it. So you're typically at like, it depends on how many treatments you do. There's a lot of things that go into this. So I'm just going to breeze past all that. But at the end, typically you can look anywhere between 70, 80% of an improvement. Um, Everybody's response rate, again, is going to be different. The amount of treatments that you're doing, what treatment you're doing, the settings that you use. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not an easy thing to discuss, but I'm going to try and simplify
Yeah.
it as much as possible. Those are really the things that you can do to help with acne scars, and you do get a good result out of it. But again, you're investing all this money into your skin. Keep in mind, it will never be 100% gone. And of course, you want to make sure that the acne is under control before we start treating the scars. Otherwise, it's kind of like a never ending cycle and you're spending lots of money. So don't let anybody treat you if you still have active acne. A few pimples a month, it's not a big deal, but if you're seeing a lot of scarring still, just wait.
Yeah, that's great advice. Do you have any tips for those who maybe are interested in receiving or looking into laser treatments? How do we find a trustworthy provider? Do you have any tips on what to
Oh,
avoid or maybe what to look for?
it's really difficult. Laser, you could be the most experienced person in the entire world, and something can still go wrong. Um,
Mm.
that is why waivers are always signed before you do a laser treatment. And that's just really the ugly of doing laser that no one really talks about. Something can go wrong. Um, for the most part, when you're going to people who have experience and knows what they're doing, the risk is virtually non-existent, to an extent, depending on what treatment is being done. But things like laser hair removal or like doing a little bit of microneedling, all of these things from the provider's standpoint typically won't go wrong. It's the aftercare where things start to go wrong. The
Mm.
big thing that we always will recommend when we're doing procedures that are breaking open the skin, changing your pillowcases, changing all of your linens realistically. A lot of people don't think about that, but the bacteria that's on it, you could increase your risk of something going wrong. There's a lot of things that you want to avoid: heat, sun, all that kind of stuff. Trying to find, though, a good technician, it's really listen to your gut. The main things that I always say to people is tell them you want to see before and afters of the procedure that they're recommending, of their patients, not from the company. And typically, when you have a photo given, that photo, if it's from the manufacturer, is on their website. So you can always just go to the manufacturer's
Wow.
website, and if you see the photo is there and it's not accredited to the clinic or spa that you're at, because sometimes they will post your before and afters if they feel like they're really good, but they'll credit you, so you know that it is from them. If you're just seeing general photos that you can like Google CO2 before and afters, and you see a bunch of photos, it's a little bit sketchy, for lack of better words. I was thinking of
Yeah.
a better way to put it, but I'm like, it's a little sketchy. You want to see that
Yeah.
person's before and afters because they're telling you that they're able to do this with the treatment that they're recommending, the machine that they have. So show me that you can do that. Show me your before and afters. And before and afters are honestly what sells everything. Like, you don't have to say much once you show what you're capable of doing. It kind of just speaks for itself,
Mhm.
right? It's why before and afters are always used in advertisements for everything, is because it shows you what it's capable of doing. So that's the biggest one. Second is always consent form. See, and your before and after care. You should have printouts of both, and you should be reviewing both of them as well and asking questions. If you never jump into a consultation and do the procedure the same day, I always advise against that. Sometimes it's pushed just for the sale, but you really want to make sure that you're thinking about what you're doing. So if you find people are too pushy, that's where that gut instinct should come in and tell you, maybe not this person. But that's like the best advice I could give for trying to figure out
Yeah.
who to trust and who not to trust, because it's really not that simple.
Yeah.
Reviews and listening to like word of mouth is like the best that I could
Yeah.
suggest as well.
I mean, those are all really great tips for navigating it, especially because it is so expensive. Insurance is likely not going to cover it.
I've never
So
seen it.
just empowering. No, no,
Never.
no, not in the States for sure.
Definitely not in Canada either. They don't
No,
care.
yeah. Yeah. So definitely like empower yourself to shop around, research. You're in the driver's seat here. You can say no. I
Mhm.
know that that can be really hard, I think, in the medical space to be like, nope, you're not the one. It can be hard, but it sounds like, yeah, definitely vetting who you're looking at, because you want to have trust with the
Exactly.
person who's doing something like this.
And on top
Yeah.
of it, sometimes the provider will actually turn you away. And that is actually one of the most highly respected things, in my opinion, because if a provider can say to you, I don't have what you need, I don't think I can make
Mhm.
the goals that you want achievable, that is much more respectable than taking your money, treating you, and you still not being happy, but that person just made a ton of money off of you. So if you're ever
Yeah.
rejected as well, don't take that as an insult. That's actually pretty credible in most scenarios. It's pretty credible for somebody to say, "I don't have what you need," and typically they'll also make a recommendation on who or where you can look to get what you want.
Yeah, that's really solid advice too, and it takes a lot to yeah turn away the money, right? So definitely
Yep.
shows character and could really help out when you're seeking for treatment. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation.
Thank you for having
Like I'm,
me.
I'm I feel like I'm going to be a chemical exfoliation pro now. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And I would love it if you can just share, like, where can we find you on the beautiful internet? Where can listeners connect with you further?
So I am Maximum Skin everywhere, spelt exactly how it sounds. Maximum Skin, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. That's pretty much it. And then right now, I'm not in any clinics. If anybody's in the GTA, Toronto area, not in practicing in any clinics right now because I am in school for nursing. But stay tuned because there are some fun things that are about to happen. So I'm very excited for that as well.
Awesome. Thank you again, Justin.
Thank you.
What a fun and informative conversation. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you did, please take a moment to rate and review the show. You can rate it if you're listening on any podcatcher, you can rate it with stars. If you're on Apple Podcasts, rate it with stars. If you have a few moments, I would be so honored if you could just write a few sentences about how you're enjoying the show. Those written reviews help the show so much. We are just getting started with Unpacking Beauty, and those ratings not only help find new listeners, but they also help me find new guest experts for the show. And hey, I want to shout out CWin21 for the amazing 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. I'm so grateful for your support. If you also love the conversation and you know somebody who would love this information, please share this with them any way that you can. Share it with your friends, your family, share it on social media. It is such an amazing way to spread word about the show, and it really helps the show grow. I am so grateful to you for listening, for watching, for sharing, for rating and reviewing. I don't even think you understand how helpful it is, and I'm so grateful to you for being here with me today. Now, I have a lot of topics and fun guests lined up for the upcoming episodes of Unpacking Beauty, but if you have an episode suggestion or a guest suggestion, I am all ears. Drop me a line. If you're on Spotify, you can answer the Q&A for this episode and drop your suggestion. If you're on YouTube watching, just drop it right in the comments. And if you're anywhere else, you can follow the link in the show notes to leave me a voicemail, and you might even have your voice featured on the show. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I'll see you again soon in 2 weeks for the next episode of Unpacking Beauty. Talk to you soon.